Hey everybody, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. And today we're going to be working with some foil. And if you like to put foil effects on your lure, whether it's just plain reflective foil or you're going for some 3D effects, or one of an infinite number of textures, we're going to be talking about that today, so stick around. So foiling lures is a pretty common practice. Lots of folks do it, and it's a really quick and easy way to really enhance the look of your lure, get that reflective flash, and also give you a nice background for paint. It really does help to sort of change the character of the paint you put on it just a little bit. Now I do a lot of chroming, or actually silver plating of my lures, and if you haven't seen the process, I'll put a link over here. And I get questions, why do you foil lures if you can silver plate it and make it look like chrome? Well, with silver plate, you can't have texture. You can only have a very smooth surface. So there's still something to be said about using foil and being able to get a reflective surface and a texture. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick foil of just the head of this little experimental swim bait, and just to show you the technique so you can see how simple and straightforward it is. So for those of you who haven't done this, this tape is just HVAC or air conditioning and heating tape. This is usually being used to seal your ducting in your house. There's nothing special about it. It's definitely better than household foil that you use for cooking because it's a thicker gauge, and best of all, it has its own adhesive, and this is just a backing. Just trace the head. And when you do this, you can leave it a little big, and I like to trace kind of far from the edge. Now I'll cut it out. You want to try to avoid points or really sharp corners and try to round everything off. So what I usually do to make sure that I got one for one side and one for the other, because they're going to be mirror images, I'll fold over enough of this foil tape and then put my template, if I have one, on one side, trace it, and then I can cut both at the same time, and I'll have a left and a right. But on this one, I'm just doing one side just to show you the technique. Really two key parts of putting this on. The first is getting it aligned, and the second is getting it smoothed out. The alignment is just one of those things you got to get a feel for, and it really is going to be very dependent on how important it is to the shape of your lure. Some lures, it doesn't matter much. Some lures, it matters a lot. Now, once you've got it in place, you want to start getting it stuck down in the middle. The deep details, like the eye sockets, I like to bridge over a little bit because I don't want to create a bunch of wrinkles. Now, you can see the wrinkles starting to be created right there. What you want to do is move from the areas with the tightest radiuses, the really smallest curves, and stick them there first, and then push the excess towards the areas with the bigger radiuses. This makes it a little easier to sort of smooth out and stretch out the foil. To do that, you want to use something that's smooth, has no sharp edges. You can use a pencil, and you can see it starts to smooth out pretty quickly, but you definitely want to get the ones right in those tight radius areas first. And after you've got this thing on there the way you want it, and you've smoothed it out, and you've got it all in the little grooves that you want it in, just taking a little piece of microfiber, you can get a pretty good luster on it. You can see that's a pretty nice finish for very little effort. Adding a little texture really makes a difference. And while I don't want to put a whole bunch on the head on this, because there's a fin and everything else, you can add a little bit of texture. So one of the things I want to get across in this video is that you can find a lot of different ways to put a texture on your foil. I like to use knurling. And here's a little knurled knob. that I had just laying around, but you can find knurling on just about any handle, on tools, all kinds of things. And then just by rolling this knurling on, you get a nice little effect that looks very much like very small, sort of sardine size scales. And don't worry that it isn't a perfect representation of real scales, because once you put the paint on, this is going to look really cool. The paint will get down into those grooves and it'll give it a lot of character. Of course, if you want to get the ultimate in a 3D scale foil, this scaling technique is really nice. And if you haven't seen how I do it, I'll put a link to the video right here. Alright, so now let's talk about getting these textures before you actually put them on. So embossing these textures on the foil is really as simple as it looks, and you can use a lot of different sort of materials, mostly fabric type materials like this stuff. This stuff is the stuff ladies use. I think they use them for the veils on wedding dresses. So they come in different thickness, or I guess hole sizes. I don't know how they're rated, but you can see there's kind of an intermediate, and then a big and a small one on this one. And you'll need some sort of tablet or platform to use as a smooth surface to get the texture on there. And I just take and I tape it down so it doesn't move on me. I like to cut out the shape that I'm going to finally have on the lure first, but you can do it either way. You can do the big piece. And then you just need a roller, and this is just a piece of aluminum tubing, and I have a plastic tube that fits in it pretty nicely. You can just use a piece of PVC. I like to have a kind of a rubbery surface to work on. You can work on just wood, but you want something that's hard and flat. And this is actually a piece of marble that I had left over from a bathroom project. I just put this soft craft surface stuff on there, just glued it on there with some double stick. So when you make your little platform, you can use a hard piece of marble, or you can just get a piece of shelving material, that laminate shelving material that already has a smooth surface and is pretty rigid and tends to be real flat. You can also take a piece of regular wood and then sand it down, and I like to give it a coat of Plasti Dip. This is just spray on Plasti Dip, and that gives me a nice tacky surface and a surface that gives just a little bit, and I feel like it gives me a little bit of results. You put plenty of pressure down and then roll it through. And that gives you a really nice texture. Now you can use all kinds of things. A lot of people like to use, this is window screen. The only thing I don't like, well, I don't like a couple of things about window screen. One, it's an actual true weave, so that means that there's points where one's up above the other, and so you get kind of dimples instead of a nice kind of scale look. And they're perfect squares, so if you want it to look like diamonds, you got to cut your piece on a 45-degree bias. It's a halfway decent job, but you can see it's a lot of little points. It looks like a matrix of dots. There's also metal kind of grating. This is looks like like miniature expanded fabric, but it's actually also a weave. I'll go ahead and show you what this looks like with a macro lens. This is a matter of what you're really trying to accomplish. I kind of like that look for a bigger lure. Putting the texture on prior to putting the foil on your lure is fine. It works really well. The only thing is it sort of limits your creativity a little bit, and you really can't do this kind of thing we did here, which was apply a different kind of texture in one spot, or you could actually apply a couple of different textures here in different locations, and that's really difficult to do with this technique. So we really need to build some tools to make it a little easier to do this kind of thing. So let's start working.
In part 2, we'll design and build some tools that'll help us make these unique patterns and put them directly on your lure, giving a really organic and natural look and bringing the results to the next level, allowing for a lot more creativity. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe and hit that like button. I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.